Business model comparison in pay per lead. All right, it's not just per lead that you can charge for, and depending on the industry and vertical, you might have some different models, right? So, per lead is typically just your phone number, email address, first name, last name, and some of the other criteria your customers are asking for. And verticals could be mortgage, life insurance, real estate, compensation, and claims. You can generate those leads via Google, Meta, YouTube, Reddit, right? And another source of advertising you probably haven't heard of before is probably co-registration data. And what that essentially means is that you have these like email that tell you that you can win something, right? Like a free award or something. And then on the thank you page, basically they have this another pop-up that says enter your data here to if you want more information about reverse mortgage, for instance, or if you want a business loan, right? And those emails are just basically co-registration because it's actually one offer, but kind of an upsell to another, right? So it's basically these bulk bulk data that you're getting from the lead intent is not too high, so it's not the highest quality of leads, but you get them for cheap and you can hire a VA or somebody to call these leads. And sometimes your customer acquisition costs or lead costs might even be lower than running Meta ads and Google ads and YouTube ads because we all know how expensive that is, right? So per lead, that's one of the models, right? And we got a bunch more to cover. And specifically, how per lead works is that you capture the data either on the Meta instant form, right? So on Meta's proprietary instant form, or if you're a bit more advanced, on a custom funnel where you can basically have disqualifiers, right? And that means basically if somebody clicks on a thing that disqualifies them. For instance, they have under $20,000 in revenue, which would disqualify them for a business loan, for instance, right? And then you basically use that funnel to filter out bad leads, right? You disqualify bad leads. So what happens is that only good leads enter their information, and you sell those good leads. Phone number, email, first name, last name, and obviously the data of some of the questions you had asked and what the client or customer or lead clicked on. So lead volume, lead quality, conversion rate, cost per lead, that's the data you would be wanting to focus on. How many leads in 100 convert into paying customers, right? That's what your clients care about. If they're paying for 100 leads, they want at least 10 leads to be converted. Well, it depends on the industry, but a conversion rate at 10 is pretty good in usual cases for Meta. So clients pay for each lead delivered. Lead quality, super important, right? That's why you have these quiz funnels, so you can filter out the bad leads. Conversion rate, super important. And here you want to make sure that, I mean, if you're starting out new, you can just take a look at the funnels of your biggest competitors within an industry and kind of just copy their questions blunt right out and kind of adapt it to your own offer or what the client wants, right? But you need to make sure that the creative advertising also attracts the right people, right? You need to develop ads that, for instance, in business loans, attracts a richer target segment, right? So creative targeting needs to be on point, right? By making sure that you have the right advertisement. Targeting doesn't really matter anymore. Now mainly it's just creative advertising and targeting. Clicks. So we got these companies, right, that are working on like nine-figure companies. We got like Nerd Wallet, Lending Tree, Credit Karma, Money Supermarket. They scale because they get paid on each click, right? They have a bunch of business partners, so to say, like for instance, 5 business loan companies, and the one that's paying the most, right, that's bidding the most for the clicks, they get put on as the number one provider. So if I'm a consumer, I'm Jack, I'm searching for a business loan, obviously you're always going to click on the top three, probably always top one. So that's why they sell per click, right? Because they're doing it at volume and it's just more profitable for them to be selling at per click than leads, and it's way easier to track. So per call in this industry, which is pay per call, it's also pretty big, right? How it works is you get per billed per call. So specifically, for instance, the qualification criteria is if a customer talks longer than 20 seconds or 30 seconds, they get billed, right? So there's a cutoff. Obviously, they're not going to be paying you for a call that lasts 5 seconds. No way, right? So maybe like after a minute, if it's a good qualified lead, there are tools out there that track this data, like Ringba or Retriever, right? You get billed per call, which is basically like that's what business a lot of business owners want, right? Because for them it's a no-brainer to be paying per call. That's like the end product they want to have, right? Other than obviously per sale or per appointment. And per appointment is usually in those home services niche, and you can charge a lot for those because in roofing, right, you're selling a $10,000, a $15,000 offer, and they're going to be paying like 500, 1,000 per appointment easily if they can close, right? So that makes sense in roofing and home services. Per sale is more on like credit cards, personal loans, online banking, and business loans. And it is quite hard because you need to know everything that you'll be doing, and you're kind of dependent on how good the companies, your clients, call center or sales team is, right? So it's a bit more dangerous, but if you know your client has an amazing sales team, if you get them good leads, they're going to close, right? And if you make more money, why not? And here the bottleneck is usually tracking and visibility issues because, right, you need to look into their payment processors and having all this data. So you need a wizard Indian to figure all of that stuff out if you're not a genius yourself. But yeah, the client pays a fixed amount of commission based on each sale that you get for them. Website visitor identification, per identified visitor on a website, right? So basically, you have tools to track that as well. Typically, that's more in SaaS and B2B agencies. Infrastructure, right? It's a high ticket sale. So basically, this one I'm not that familiar with, but the client pays a high ticket or recurring fee for a lead generation infrastructure. So you're paid on a retainer. You can make a backend, like an automation process for them in Go High Level, for instance, right? Where you basically build a drip sequence of email, SMS, blue, like these blue text messages on iMessage or even on Telegram, right? If you're fucking advanced, I don't know. And you can basically charge a retainer or like kind of mix it up, retainer plus a commission model or appointment model. So you have retainer plus basically a commission on each sale that you generate via this infrastructure, right? Website visitor identification, infrastructure, commission, brokering, right? For brokering, what it essentially is you have different vendors, right? So you have different sources, different guys that are basically providing you leads. You aggregate all these leads and you send them to your client. So that's how it works, right? And you basically have a contract with a client, say, hey, you're going to be buying from me and not the vendors, right? You control the relationship, right? You have the contract in place and you basically have a bunch of different vendors that are sending you leads, right? And then you're kind of vetting which vendor is the best, which vendor am I getting the best quality from, and you basically try to sell leads and you take like a margin. So for instance, in like if I were to buy your leads for 200, right, and sell them for 250 to my client, I would make a $50 margin, right? So that's how brokering typically works, and it works because you can scale that very easily. And you, if you don't know the skill of media buying, this is usually the one that's the most profitable. And if you're amazing or a killer in sales, that's something that you should be probably looking at. So networking, industry expertise, closing, sales outreach, cold email, LinkedIn, social media, Instagram, right? So you are trying to get basically a middleman between advertisers and publishers. You find buyers and suppliers for leads, right? You find the buyers, they pay like you 250. You get the leads for, you buy them for 200. You make $50, solid profit, right? Take your cut. But you need to be looking at the industry that you're in, right, to be able to judge which specific model is more suitable for you. But for beginners starting out, which you probably are, you should be probably looking at pay per lead. It's just the simplest, right? All the only skills you need be having is some basic API integration and media buying skills on Meta, and obviously booking clients and appointments. And that's usually like a very difficult part in well, it's not a very difficult part, it's just tedious because you're back and forth communication with these managers from these large corporates, and sometimes it can take up to 3 months to close a single client. But hey, it's better than closing 10 clients and having free churn or five churn, right, with the retainer model, because they're going to be spending a lot of money with you and you're making way more. So the lifetime value increases, right? So those are the typical business models that you're going for. And here you can take a look, screenshot it if you want, if this brings you any value, and see you on to the next video.